I don't know why. And it's a brand. I got a brand new PCL, but I don't know. It's just like it just froze. So again, sorry for that. So now it's recording again. It is
Okay.
live. Okay. So where were we? I think we were talking
What?
about.
I just told you when my aunt found out that I had changed my major from because I was going to go chemistry, medical school, become a doctor, but when she found out, she pulled me to the side and reprimanded me and said to me that so much had been given to me, so many people along the way had helped me out that I owed something. I needed to give back. I shouldn't worry about going out and working in finance, making a bunch of money. That what really matters was giving back. And that's what I thought about when I graduated and decided to go back and teach for just a couple of years. And like I said, once I got in, I never wanted to leave. I loved teaching.
Wow, it would be quite. And what sort of like age group were you teaching?
So funny, it started off with middle schoolers. That's what I was going to say. When your computer shut down, I taught middle school. I taught 13-year-olds for 4 years. Anything can
Yeah.
happen. And so this was a tiny hiccup compared to the day to day in a middle school classroom. So I taught middle school for 4 years, and then I taught high school for a couple of years, and then I was a high school principal.
Wow. You know, when I was even in my school, I find that you have to be very patient to be a principal or to be a
You're right.
teacher.
It does. I mean, it takes a certain kind of person to just be patient or to understand that you've got a room with 20 personalities. And when they're teenagers, they're all in different stages of their life and different stages of development. And so it does take a special person to go in there and manage that and lead them all in the right way.
Fair enough, fair enough. And let me know a little bit. So after you became a principal, so did you recently leave that career of being a principal?
Well, so I was a high school principal for a few years. Then I had an opportunity to take a job in central office. And so, I mean, and I'll tell you the story. We'll get a chance. I hope I can come back and tell the story of that time becoming principal in that school turnaround. That is one of the most impactful moments in my career. And I think that was the turnaround that really set me up for the rest of my career. But after I was the high school principal, I worked in central office and then just kind of worked my way up. I was the special programs director overseeing different grants and different special programs. Then I was the assistant superintendent, deputy superintendent, and eventually I got to be a superintendent. But along the way, I was able to coach principals. And that was really what was the catalyst for me to come into this consulting job and set me up to leave the teaching or in school administration profession was that I wanted to coach more principals. See, along the way, I coached principals to turn around their failing schools. I had schools in the campus that I was working at. Two of them were C rated and working with the principals and pulling together their teams and kind of showing them the things that I had gone through as a principal, helped them lead their schools to turnarounds to become A rated campuses. And then as a superintendent, I took over in a place that had four F rated campuses. Great staff, great principals there, but just needed to change a few things. And we tweaked some things, and I worked with them, and just they worked really hard and put the right things in place, and we're able to turn around all four of those F-rated campuses in just a short period of time.
Wow. So when you say transition, so those schools that you're talking about, they were not really like, I wouldn't say not really successful in the process and the things they were doing.
Yeah, and so we talk about in the state of Texas, the Texas Education Agency gives letter ratings. Well, in the last school I talked about, we had four schools that were F rated. I mean, literally labeled by the state as failing schools, and the state's starting to put us on a timeline to turn the school around, or there's more and more sanctions, and the state steps in more and more. Well, we were able to get in, and in 6 weeks, the teachers worked incredibly hard, really, really dedicated themselves to it, and turned things around in a short period of time. And I go back to my work when I was the deputy superintendent, another great crew that just stepped up and turned schools that were not performing to the standard they should have and turned it to a district that had been low performing to all A rated campuses, really showing what great teachers can do when they're supported.
Okay, and when it comes to, so what is some of the form, some of the process that you kind of like implemented in those schools to make the change, to make the transformation?
Yeah, well, I think I can best tell you this in going back to the story. I go back when I became principal. I actually was really excited to become the assistant principal of the high school I'd been working at. I was a senior teacher. I was teaching economics to seniors, and I put in my application. And over the summer, I got to be the assistant principal. And the principal had been moved to another campus. He actually was setting up another school within the district, and so I got a chance to be the assistant. And the district was looking for a new principal, but they posted the position, and over again they interviewed, but nobody would take the job. And when you looked at it, there was a reason. We were a failing school. We'd been labeled by the state as academically unacceptable. We were a dangerous school. If you walked around, you would find gang signs all over the place, fresh graffiti almost on a daily basis, drug use all the time. Students just weren't coming to school, and we were, I think you would label us as a dropout factory. That's a term coined by, I don't recall who, but we had 10% or almost 10% of our students who were dropping out every year. And so at the end of their career, only about 69% of students were getting through high school. And so we had all those things stacked against us, and so nobody would take that principal job. And so the superintendent appointed me as the interim. I walked in with 10 days of experience and really not ready at all. Figured it out along the way because a group of teachers who were there stepped up. And it wasn't just the teachers there, it was the entire staff. We had a custodian who wanted to help so much that he actually mentored a couple of students. The guy who was cleaning the rooms said that he
Wow.
could do something to help these kids who were struggling to come to school. And he would check in with them and meet with them. And I found that leadership, that being able to work with a team when everybody comes together. And then it wasn't just me, it was the entire system, was everybody pulling together and pushing hard. Taught me about leadership and people stepping up to rising to expectations, but it also taught me something different. It got to be the Thanksgiving break. And man, we'd been working hard. Everybody had been working hard. And it was the week that everybody has off for Thanksgiving. And it was the Tuesday, and everybody was at home, but I was in the building. And I put in a 12-hour day. And at that point, I realized it wasn't sustainable. That I could already feel after only 3 months of school, I could already feel the cracks. I was starting to burn out. And I said, man, if I'm
Yeah.
feeling this, my teachers are feeling it too. We'd been working really, really hard, and it was a lot of care and a lot of love that was going in for the students. But if I was about to break, so was the rest of the staff. And so that Thanksgiving break, I worked the 12-hour days, but instead of just catching up, I switched the mindset to starting to develop systems, things that would be repeatable, systems that teachers could put into place, predictable, just everything that we were doing to where it was a playbook and you knew what was going to happen, whether I was there or not, to where the system didn't depend on me or didn't depend on us working harder, hustling, that we were still going to do those things, but not to the point that it was going to break us. And so I started developing the systems to where people knew what was going to happen. If a student misbehaved, there was a set of very clear guidelines. But it didn't have to be me, it could be the assistant that was going to implement those things. That when a student struggled, we had a system, we had things that we were going to do that was clear, that every classroom that was predictable, the way that they were educating students, the expectations for behavior and academics. And that let us take a breath and sustain the momentum that we had worked so hard to build up. And by the end of the year, it worked. And then going into the next year, we had the systems in place and we were able to maintain the gains. Made big gains in that first year, and then we're able to maintain them and make a few more incremental gains in the second year. But it was something that I used when I was coaching principals along the way to find what we can do that is sustainable, that if you don't show up for a day, the ship keeps on sailing forward, that the actions are predictable and sustainable, not just based on hard work, but based on systems.
Wow. And what were you doing to kind of like making sure that people are being accountable for this system? Because people are people, right? So sometimes the issue is like someone be like, for a month or two, be like, okay, sweet, and then after that, sometimes people kind of like just it goes away, like okay, system
Yeah.
or whatever. You know what I mean? So what did you do to kind of making sure that people
Yeah.
respect that system?
But Mikhail, I think the first and probably the most important thing is that people support what they help to create. And so it wasn't my system, it was our system. I didn't sit, I mean, I sat down in that week and I figured out, okay, here are the things that we need to systemize, and here are some broad ideas. And then I sat down with teachers and the leadership team. And when we're talking about cleaning rooms, I didn't say to the custodian, hey, here's exactly what you've got to do. I sat down, I said, hey, here are the ideas. Tell me, because you know way more about cleaning classrooms than I do. How does this work? How can we make it better? Share your perspective. And so we built a system together, and then people supported it. And then it did mean that I had to walk through and monitor it. It didn't mean that it was a magic key and I never had to check in on it again. But when the people who were doing the work were the ones who created it and knew that if it didn't work out, let's come back and talk about it. It's not set in stone. We can change it. If we created a system that I think is beautiful and looks really nice on paper and it's not working for you or it's not working for kids, let's back up. Let's take a moment and
Yeah.
find something that's really going to work. We can change it, but we got to make a conscious decision and then go forward with it and make sure it's working. And so it was that shared decision making, and then a lot of walking around. I wore out the bottom of my shoes within about 3 months, and so every 3 months I was buying a new pair of shoes because I was walking every
Uh,
hour to about every classroom. I didn't have a step counter. I probably should have. I imagine I was walking 10 miles a day.
And
Yeah.
what sort of like, so I kind of try to picture how did you come up so pretty much to, so did you organize sort of like a meeting initially to be like, hey, we need change?
Well, it was. I I told the story when I was at the next top speaker. I got that job as brand new principal, and I stepped to the superintendent with all sorts of courage, and I told him, look, if you can't find somebody, we need to get this job done. Just let me run it. Let me do the job, and you can keep on looking. And I walked out of there, and he thought I was so confident. And when it was time to go in, I was sitting in my truck, and I could feel my heart pounding. I was just almost hyperventilating, knowing that, man, I'm not ready for that. What am I doing? My knuckles were turning white. I was clutching the steering wheel, but I walked in there knowing that it wasn't just on me. I knew the teachers who were there. I knew the staff. I knew that we had people who could get the job done, and I was just open with them about that. And I can remember the first time I met with them, I told them, look, I don't have all the answers. I don't know everything, but I do know that this is the team that can get it done. I believe in this team, and it was just that, and just kind of that idea that if you believe in your team, if you let people rise up to the occasion, that they will, is something that I've carried with me in every leadership position I've ever been in. Give people the opportunity, and I believe they will rise up. I saw it in kids, I saw it in teachers, I've seen it in every situation I've been in.
Wow. And why? So why did you? Because at the end of the day, like you could have said, "Oh, hey, it's just a job. I'm doing my job." You know what I mean? Why did you really decide to be like, "Hey, I'm going to take this project. I'm going to turn things around." What was behind your mind?
Because because there were 600, actually there were 700 kids that were depending on us. And you look at it into the neighborhoods, and I didn't share with you, the school that I was working in had the distinction of literally being the poorest school in the nation. So in all of America, the school I was working at had the highest poverty rate. And so we looked around, and these are families that have serious challenges because they have such a struggle with their income. Well, I've believed that the way to turn that around is education. Education is going to provide opportunities. Well, we were that opportunity, that if we could turn it around for these kids, then they can turn around and they'll be the adults in our community that will turn things around in our community. I mean, they were depending on us. It was us or nobody.
It's amazing. And when it comes to, so I heard based on what you're telling me, and I actually spoke to few economists in the past, and economists are really strategic people. Am I correct?
Yeah. Yes.
it is the case?
Well, because I mean, economics is it. Yes, it's a social science, but it is nuts and bolts. What is the impact of this action? It's really economics. When we look at it, it's a study of scarcity, right? We have so much in resources. So as a school, we looked at, okay, here are our resources. Here's what we have to work with. What's the best use of these resources to achieve this goal? And so we were strategic. We looked at what are the most important things that we do to increase our academic outcomes, and it was bringing in all sorts of I mean, it's just talking to the experts in the math field. Okay, what do we need to focus on for our students to catch up? They're years behind in math. What is the thing that these students can learn to raise our scores in 1 year? And we made 30-point gains in math in 1 year.
Wow.
Yeah.
So do you think that just by changing the sort of like the environment, the kind of like leadership and no the environment around the school made a difference in the student becoming better learner and improving the grade?
Yeah. I think it was holistic. I don't think it was one thing, but I think you did nail it. It's the environment. It's everything about it. But I, I told the story at the next top speaker that I I was brand new. I admittedly didn't know what I was doing, and I did some crazy things that some of them, actually a lot of them, ended up working out. I knew that we were a dangerous school. I knew that things were not safe. That there were some students that were really getting in a lot of trouble, and it was serious trouble. And I decided to take the 10 boys that were causing the most trouble, and I turned them into a leadership club. And I shared the story before. I knew that these kids had influence. These boys were gang leaders. They had people following. They were absolutely already leading people, but they were leading them in places you never want kids to go. So I took them and
Yes,
I brought them
yes.
together. And we had kids who were in opposing gangs, and I checked in with those kids once a day. Every day I would find them, or they would find me, and we would just check in, just a quick handshake, a quick check in. Hey, how are you feeling today? We're gonna have a good day, and that was it. Check out with them at the end of the day
Wow.
if they had any sort of trouble, and then once a week we would sit down and we would have lunch. And those kids, when somebody cared about them and somebody had expectations of them, they rose up. Like I said, that when you set those high expectations of somebody, they rise up to them. Now, don't get me wrong; these kids were not angels. They still got in trouble. They still did wrong. These were kids who had been in a lot of trouble. But along the way, they opened up, and I shared. They shared some really rough stories. I had a kid who shared with me that he had watched his uncle murder his father during some drunken argument. We had another kid share with me that he had been in junior high. He had been just 12 years old. He was a sixth grader when a family member started to put drugs in his backpack and have him deliver because he knew a 12-year-old wasn't going to get busted. He wasn't suspicious, and he was forced into doing that. They shared with me that, yeah, they were in these gangs, but where else do they fit in? Where else do people accept them or love them? That it's definitely not at home. It's definitely hadn't been at school for them. And so that was the only place that they felt safe because they definitely didn't feel safe at home. But with these kids, we saw them turn it around. I shared one story, and it was a real touching thing. But the truth of it, it was actually two stories. I shared it as one story. Next top speaker, I was at a elementary banquet, and I had my daughter. I had my own daughter, and I was taking there, and I was so proud. My daughter was getting an award, and one of the boys who I had caught marking up a bathroom in my second week on the job, that that marker was so thick with gang signs that I had to remove him from for 30 days. And I mean, and he had smoked marijuana in the bathroom. It stunk up the whole hallway, and that kid was walking his daughter, who was the same age as my daughter, to get an honor roll certificate. This kid who had been in more trouble, the kid never received an honor roll certificate, had never even imagined that would happen to him, had turned into an amazing dad. His kid was just top of the class, but it was because of the example he was setting for her And I like to think that maybe I had a little bit to do with that, helping that kid turn around, showing him that it was possible. And then I shared that one, but it was in that same year that, and it was just a couple months afterwards, I saw another kid, same age, same situation with his daughter at a father-daughter dance. That this was a kid whose parents weren't really around for him, but he very much was there for his kids. And his kids looked up to him and they knew that dad was there and dad cared about him and dad was not not the kid that everybody imagined this kid would grow up to be. And so I think,
Wow.
and I don't want to take all the credit because I had that club and I supported them. I mentioned to you that custodian, but it was an entire campus. The the staff was just this group of heroes that stepped up in ways that I don't think they ever imagined they could. They changed lives. They were visiting homes and sitting in living rooms. I was there with my assistant principal, talking to grandparents about finding a way to track down their grandkid who hadn't been in school in 2 years, and they would find him and bring him back. And that kid would struggle, but teachers would help him along the way, and a cafeteria worker would tell him, "Hey, we missed you. Come in, and hey, I made this special for you." And I mean, it was everybody pitching in to turn things around for kids.
Wow, that's a very, very, very powerful, inspiring story, I would say, because it
Yeah,
would take
definitely.
you know, yeah, a big person or a big group of people to kind of like really care for people around them, to be like, hey, you are valued, and I think that's quite important, and I guess maybe that's why now you are where you are as a coach. But tell me a little bit about the next top speaker, because I want to dive a little bit more about you as a person as well, because I find it very interesting how you believe in people, and that's something that I want to go through
Yeah.
a bit of your journey. So tell me a little bit about your journey as a person.
Yeah. Well, there are a couple things. I think I got to go all the way back to growing up. I grew up on a ranch, and I would bet that ranch life in South Texas is probably not very different from ranch life in New Zealand. That you grow up tough. You get up, you work hard, you get thrown off of a horse. You don't cry about it. It is a tough life, and you don't complain. And so that it was really important. It was an important thing to me, and I remember having that in the back of my head and going into play junior high football and getting to play in seventh grade. And I knew I was tough. I knew I was ready. And one of the things that I looked forward to almost more than anything else when I started playing football was that I was going to get to play for the head football coach, Coach Joe Alex. That was the toughest guy anybody had ever met. And I thought that was what it was all about. You go in and you're tough, and you're a football player, and you're
Yeah.
tough. And coach showed me, yeah, he definitely was. He definitely was tough. He lived up to the hype, but he taught me something different. Coach Joe Alex taught me that toughness is good, and you want to be that. But what mattered more than anything was that you cared about your people. See, he was the toughest guy I knew. He had no problem being tender and caring and making sure that you knew that he cared about you as a person and that was what carried people to follow. At least that's what carried me to follow him, to make sure that that was it. And so I carried that with me. That at 14 years old, I learned that important lesson that, yeah, I'm going to be tough and I'm going to drive forward, but you've got to care about people if you want them to follow you. If you want people to do for you, you got to show them that you honestly care about them as a person and you have their best interest at heart.
It's amazing. And when it
And so
comes
I,
to the
I, I
next,
carried that with me
yeah,
everywhere I went.
yeah, that's pretty amazing story. And when it comes to the next top speaker, so I can see that uh, I would say, do you believe that you are a high achiever as a person?
I think I've been able to achieve some things. I look back and there were a lot of things that I did achieve and accomplish that I'm proud of. I think that every time I look at those, it was done with the team. I think that I was blessed to
Mm,
be in the right place and I took advantage of that. But every accomplishment that I looked at, it was because people pulled together. There's not something that I did that I can step in and say, "Oh, I did this all by myself. I pulled myself up by my bootstraps." And I know I worked hard, but it was never without a team. It was never without that. And so yeah, I mean, well, I can even look at the next top speaker. I came in and I didn't admit this. I had done a speaking engagement. I was really motivated. I had an opportunity to speak for a group, and I was paired up with a guy who was a real pro. This guy was amazing. He was sharing with me that he had done, I think he had said, 6,500 talks, and so he'd been doing it for years. And I watched him, and he, man, he was just leagues beyond me. I couldn't compare, and I stood up, and he was an A performer, and I delivered maybe a C performance. Was disappointed. I mean, I what the audience deserved, and he was gracious, and he helped me out, and he stepped in, and the audience was gracious too. It was a good, positive audience, but I knew that I had to improve, and so when I entered Next Top Speaker, it was the training that Kaylee offered and the tribe that really stepped up and supported speakers. And so I went through the training that she provided and then joining the groups and getting feedback on my speaking. And so it's been, again, a team effort for me to improve, to be able to go in and improve. And I don't think I'm done yet. I think I did a good job, but I got to watch the other speakers there, and the one, two, and three, man, they were amazing. I got a lot to learn from them, and I think I can get better.
Wow. So, but you got to the top 10 out of 4,000 inscription. Is that correct?
Yeah, yeah.
That's
I think they
amazing.
said 4,040 people registered, and then 100 people made the finals to be able to give their speeches, and it narrowed down to top 10. Along the way, I in the first round got the People's Choice Award. The audience voted. Second round, I got the Speech Choice, where the people who had spoken in the tournament got to vote, and so in that second round, I won the Speaker's Choice, and then in the end, I was top 10. Didn't finish in the top three. I was hoping to be top three, but like I said, watching those top three speakers, man, phenomenal. I did learn so much from them. I took notes and saw things that I can improve on in my own speaking, and am working on.
Fair enough. And what's the reason why? So is speaking something that you kind of like want to keep bringing into your life for your projects and for your coaching business?
I think that it's critical. I think that communication is just no matter what you're doing. And so to improve as a speaker means that I'm going to be better at training. So if I want to take a group of people and I want to train them, if I can improve my speaking and if I can improve my communication, then I'm going to be able to add more value to them. And so that's part of it. And then also I think that what I shared, that story about that turnaround of the high school, I think there's value there that people who are going through things can learn from that. The big message that I tried to send was that I wasn't ready. I took a job before I was ready, but I look around, how many of us have things that we're facing that we're hesitating on, that we're not doing because we feel like we're not quite ready. Or man, I would do that, but let me wait until I have the right plan, or it's just not the right time for me to do that. Well, my message is I wasn't ready either, but I stepped into it and I believed in my team. I believed that there were people around me who were ready and willing to step up and we would rise together. And that if I wasn't ready, I was going to do the best I could, because if not me, who else was going to do it for these kids? And I think that there are people in all sorts of positions who are in a similar situation, that they have value to add. They've got some great things that they can do if they are just able to step up and don't worry about being ready. Just move forward.
What do you think is something that kind of like stopping people to move forward or to step up?
Yeah, I think it's a lot of things, and I think it might be unique to the person. I know that. I mean, I know for me, sometimes I hesitate because I worry about doing it perfectly or doing it right, or sometimes we compare ourselves to others. I think what one of the things that hurt me, that first speaking engagement that I had, was that I watched the other guy go before me, and man, he was a pro. He knocked their socks off. And I sat there and I watched him for 15 minutes, and I got in my head comparing myself to him. I said, man, what am I gonna do? I'm not nearly that. He had him on a roller coaster, laughing and crying and I said, man, I'm not that guy. I can't do that. But I think it's that. But but how many times is it for us that we don't step into something that we can do because we're comparing ourselves to somebody else instead of and now that I'm out of that situation, I can look back and say, yeah, well, actually I can compare myself to my own past and man, I'm better than I was and I'm still growing. But if we're stuck comparing ourselves to others, that hurts us, or if there's perfection, or if we're trying to just wait for the right time. And there are so many reasons, but none of them are really valid.
Mm. And when it comes to so your coaching, I'm just sorry, I'm just checking as well your coaching, your LinkedIn page, just to get to your
Yeah.
uh, website. So I can see with the coaching that you created, I'm just going to share the screen quickly if you don't mind.
Sure.
I just want to talk a little bit about. So I can see. So the name is Beacon Consulting. Is that correct?
Yeah. Yeah. Beacon Administrative Consulting.
Okay, and so are you is the coaching more for like individual or companies or
Yeah. So I'm coaching. It's kind of on two sides. On the school, individual who's part of a team. I'm really geared toward principals in Texas. That's one of the big core areas for me. And so whether it's a
Mhm.
campus principal, I want to work with you to help you turn around your school and lead your team better, or if I can coach you and then I can work with your team while we're at it, because that's what I did when I was a deputy superintendent as a superintendent. I worked one on one and I worked with the team. But I also, on the other side of it, am starting to do training for businesses. And right now it's training to train them on communication and connecting and showing how by improving your communication and your customer service, you build lifelong customers. Instead of just a little
Mm,
interaction, you build somebody who's going to come back and work with you for the rest of their lives because you're the one who they trust and you've shown that you care about them as a customer. Same way we showed as a teacher that I cared about you as my kids.
amazing, amazing. And tell us a little bit about so what is sort of like because what are some of the strategies, some of the obviously don't give me
Yeah.
the full process, but some of the strategy that you kind of use to transform people, to rewire their mind or to transform their life so they can pretty much transform their business or what are some of the things that you implement?
Yeah, well, so I'll go into that, and then you mentioned strategy. I've got two other things that I wanted to talk about, but as far as working with individuals, when I'm working with principals, it's meeting them where they're at. It's helping them to define, well, what are the things that they're going to implement in their schools, and it's a systems approach. When I'm working with principals, it is what are the systems that you can focus on the things that are going to move the needle the most. As a school principal, one of the things that helps them the most is to be able to get into the classroom and not get caught up with the office work. So how do I help them systematize the office work to get into the classrooms? But with a small business, it's so frequently just the basic communication to show business owners how important it is how they're communicating. That if you're running a business, it takes somebody 6 seconds to decide if they like your business or not. They're going to walk in, and a first impression is going to be formed. And so that very first communication, can we make that something that a customer feels completely welcome? And then along the way, can we help them continue to feel welcome? The communication and that customer service that's really going to deliver an experience for that customer. But I want to step in. So
Wow.
I want to step in. You asked about strategy. I got two things that I'm really proud of. I worked with a team and accomplished two things that were first first in the state. The first one was health insurance. I got to work as deputy superintendent, and we had a new superintendent come in, a guy who taught me a ton, just helped me develop as a person, to help me develop as a leader and as an administrator. And one of the things he pointed out in his first couple of weeks on the job was that our school health insurance wasn't getting the job done. We had health coverage that was so expensive that a third of our employees just weren't taking it. But like other schools in Texas, we were forced to choose TRS Active Care. We were a mid-sized school, and in 2003, we were forced into it. And once you were in, there was no way out. Well, we worked with the team to find a loophole, to find a way out of TRS Active Care, and to bring in healthcare for our employees that was 100% free to them. So when we were spending money and had a health insurance that employees couldn't use, we were able to basically change state law, be the first in the entire state to find a way out of TRS Active Care, provide free health coverage to our employees, saved enough money to build an on-site clinic so our employees had convenient access to health care and improve the health outcomes for all of our staff. And
Wow.
that led to everybody in the state being able to opt out. We presented all over the state on how to do it, but it was, again, that idea that my boss came in with. He just said, "Hey, we've got to do that," and we put together a team, and I was able to run the building the healthcare side of it within our local school system, and then present to other people. But working with that team to find a way to do it. And then the other one that was first one in the state. We had students who were graduating from high school. We found that after graduation, about half of our students would go on to college, go on to university. But among those students, after 6 years of college, only about a quarter of them were getting a degree. And so what frequently was happening was a student would graduate from high school, they would go off to university. And in 2 years, they would come back with no degree and about $50,000 in debt. And then what are you going to do from there? And it was happening over
Yeah.
and over to our kids. Well, we found a way using rules that already existed within the state to create a 5th year program. And so we said students who graduated from our high school, if they wanted to, could stick around for another year and get free college for up to 2 more years after graduation to earn an associate degree, have the support of counselors. We were giving them breakfast and lunch. We had a bus that was driving into university. We had somebody who was checking in with them every day, checking on their grades weekly, to be able to give kids an opportunity who never would have gone to college, or students who risk going off to college and then coming back with 2 years of debt and nothing to show for it. Set that up first that I knew of in the state to actually run that full program, and then I worked with the university to be able to set that up to replicate it at other high schools.
That's amazing. That's pretty powerful. And when it comes to so after studying after 4 years, they were able to kind of like stay 2 more years into the school. But
Yep.
how are you? How was it funded? Like how? Because like
Yeah.
you say, it
So
costs a
that
lot
was
of. It costs a yeah.
So that was the amazing. That was the strategy. It actually paid for itself because in the state of Texas, there are early college high school programs that the law said that for a P-TECH program, after a student graduates, they can generate funding from the state for 2 more years. Nobody else was taking advantage of that. And so we looked at it, we got it in writing from the state that we could do it. We worked with the college, brought them back in, and we had our first year that we did it, we had 25 students, not a huge number, but 25 students. Well, the cost for the college was really low. The college gave us a great deal. It was a few $100s per student for them to go to college. The cost for the bus wasn't very expensive, a bus driver and some diesel fuel. And we paid a counselor that was working half on a grant and half of our pay. So we had about $40,000 that we were paying out in that. But the students generated about $250,000 from the state, and it only cost about $100,000 to run the program. And so we had $150,000 to do things like buy them laptop computers, make sure that any books or school supplies they needed, they got, to make sure that we had some money to give scholarships for students who needed some extra money because sometimes they might need school supplies, or maybe they needed a new pair of shoes. We were able to give scholarships to provide those things to them. But it was strategy.
Mm.
Anybody could have done it. We had a team that got together and just figured out somebody to push that envelope and do it for the first time.
Mm. Wow, that's quite a very. So, were you the only school that was doing this program?
As far as I know, that we were the only ones. So we reached out. We'd heard rumors that somebody else was, but they weren't doing it like us. They were just sending the kids off to the university. For us, we wanted to
Mm.
give the support. So for these students,
Yeah.
these were the kids who stayed with mom and dad. Instead of, and the big savings
Mm.
for the family was they didn't have to rent an apartment. An apartment was going to be $1,000 a month, and so they saved that
Mm.
money. Instead of doing that, they let the kids stay at home with them, and then they would give them a ride to, or the school would give them a ride to the university, and we gave them
Wow.
breakfast and lunch. And well, we got reimbursed for the breakfast and the lunch for the students who were doing that.
Mm, okay. And so I do have another question that is kind of like I would say, I don't know if it's so when it comes to management, right? How do you manage your own time? Uh, because not just time, your money, your time, your because I know that well, based on what what you shared, it's like there would be a lot of management involved into like allocating the fund, the time to manage to not to manage people, but the time to kind of like set up those meetings, to commit. So how do you manage your life at home?
I have got an amazing wife. My and my wife is
Ah,
she's got her own career. Well, so my wife has got her own career, but she is so forgiving and gives me so much grace, and I am so
mm,
grateful to have her as a partner. I am positive that I could not have done any of this stuff without her. But between the two of us,
mm,
we also have a great support system, and I'm so grateful to have it. I've got my parents, my brothers and sisters. Um, we were at Thanksgiving and last week, and my kids spent time with me, and they spent time with my brothers. I got two brothers, and they were off in the other room with one brother, and then outside with another brother, and then my cousin took them out to go horseback riding. We've got a support system. I don't want to sound like I've got it all figured out as far as this. I've got a ton of help, and we're taking it. So I'm not
mm,
I'm not a guy who can say this is how you very clearly manage. I take the help where we can get it, and I'll take on challenges. And I'll tell you,
mm.
sometimes sometimes I get it wrong, and I've learned to give myself some grace and get up and brush myself off and try again.
Mm. And what is some of the habits that you have created behind your life to keep like growing and growing and to keep the momentum?
Yeah, so I think there are a couple of things. I think it's the first one, and it's two things that I've already said. The first one is that step forward even when I'm not ready. I'm doing things that I don't have the perfect plan to do, and I know that I can step forward and do them and step back and learn from it and go again. I mean, the speaking is a really good example for me. That I stepped in, I
Mm,
wasn't ready, but I learned, and I was able to step in, and even the next top speaker wasn't perfect, but grew, did better than I'd done my first time. But I've learned a lot from that, and I think that stepping in the next time, I think that I'll do better, and I've done better in speeches that I've given already. A couple of weeks after, I already feel like I'm doing better than I did, and so
mm,
I approach things with a growth mindset. But I think I learned that from teaching. I had You have to have that with kids. You've got to understand or
mm,
believe that your students can grow wherever they're at. You can get better if you just put in the work and keep on trying. And so for me, it's stepping forward to know that I can get better, but you got to do something. You got to have a starting point to get better from. And then the other part
mm,
is to care about your people and trust that people are going to rise. Trust that people are there, people are good, people will help you. People are in it to succeed and they want to rise with you. And so if you're when you're lifting others up, I think you rise even more than they do. And so I focus on, well, let me go, how can I lift others up? When I think about it, how can I help this small business? how can I add value to them? And then along the way, I believe that I'm going to rise with them.
Wow, so yeah, I can see. So so you are kind of like big on collaboration with people and working with. I mean,
Yeah.
that's yeah, yeah. Okay, okay.
Yeah.
And another question that I have for you is for someone that is sort of like maybe going through a rough time or is not able to kind of like rise. What would you recommend for someone that kind of like wants to get himself out or herself out and start growing?
Yeah. It's tough. I think that all of us have moments when we struggle, and I don't want to downplay the struggle someone else has had and tell them, oh, just snap out of it, because that's not what it is. I don't want to send that message. But I'll encourage somebody who is struggling and somebody who feels stuck to trust that their tide will change and keep pushing and step forward and just try that next step and be willing to accept the help that's out there. Trust that people will step up for you. I don't mean that everybody is gonna go and lift you. Yeah, no, no, no. It's not that, but there's somebody. There are people there, and they're in unexpected places. Be open to accepting their help. Be open to finding it wherever it meets you. But just keep moving forward. I don't know when or how your struggle is going to end, but I would say just believe that it will.
Amazing. And the last question that I have for you, Ben, before we hand the interview, it was if someone wants to reach out to you or wants to kind of like get some support from you, where can they reach out?
Best place to find me. I've got a website that all sorts of links shows everything that I'm doing. Beacon345.com. And I'm on social media. You can find me on Facebook, Benjamin Clinton. I accept friends requests, and so you can find me on that or on my website. And I'm excited to work with folks. I look forward to more collaboration.
Mm, perfect. Well, thank you so much for sharing everything, Ben. I think it was a very powerful talk. And I'm actually, I learned a lot as well, just to let you know. Let me just, and I actually just want to share with you something. One of the reasons why I do all those talk is to really kind of like, listen to every people, every coaches, because I do believe that every single story is powerful. And I find yours was as well one of the very powerful one. I really like the way how you believe in people, especially like sometimes I'm come from a school where as well there was a bit of like some nut cases as well, and I was maybe sort of like one of them, but 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 the thing is like and but it's good to have to know that there's people that believe in you. There's people, especially for the younger generation, to be like, hey, you're not alone in this. So I find it very inspiring and very powerful. It's,
Well, Mika, I'll share. There's one thing, and I wouldn't me. I wouldn't be here if people didn't believe in me. I didn't mention to you. I don't talk a lot about it, but I dropped out of college. I got a chance to play football for Rice University. Loved it. It was a dream come true. But I hurt my knee, and then I hurt it again. I had
oh,
back-to-back surgeries, and just left school. Was just so disillusioned that I left, and eventually realized I needed to go back. So I went back, but I didn't have a scholarship, and I couldn't. I had worked, so I couldn't get financial aid. I went back, and I was homeless, and I didn't have a meal plan. The best I could do was I got a job working for the football team for half tuition, but I was sleeping in my car in hot, sticky Houston, Texas nights. But along the way, a cafeteria lady caught me stealing food from a cafeteria, and she gave me a job that came with a meal plan. My
oh,
boss with the football team somehow found out that I was sleeping in my car, and he very quietly put the key to his office in my hand and said, hey, I never use that at night in case you need to use it. Well, it had a couch. That couch was where I slept for the rest of the year. Without those two people helping me, I don't think I would have graduated. So I got through college because people helped me. and I knew that I had to pay that forward. I owe even more than I owed before that, and so it's natural that I go forward and I help other people.
Wow. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for sharing that. Well, yeah, very. I guess that's the story that that people want to know as well. Because I find, yeah, it's very very inspiring again. Well, thank you so much for your thank you so much for your time, Ben. And I guess I really hope to see like the progress and wherever you are going, and I will definitely keep following what you're doing. So guys, make sure to tune in for the next episode of the Founders Formula. It was a pleasure to have Ben again with us. Always amazing stories, and that's what the Founders Formula is about. So thank you very much for your time, Ben.
Thank you, Miguel. Great to be here.
Thank you so much. Oh. Oh, you see, that's why I was